Random House Audio Voices presents Lost in My Own Backyard, a walk in Yellowstone National Park. This is Tim Cahill. Lost in My Own Backyard. Yellowstone Park and vicinity is the largest intact temperate zone ecosystem in the Northern Hemisphere. It is a vast area of earthly riches almost beyond imagining, a natural playground complete with geysers and thermal features so strange that early white visitors referred to the area as Wonderland. There are herds of bison and elk, there are beaver and wolves and marmot and osprey and eagles. There is the whole complement of North American fauna. This is not an amusement park, however, and it's a good idea to pay attention. Yellowstone is a place where the unwary or the unlucky can get mauled by a bear, gored by a bison, stomped by a moose, or bitten by a rattlesnake. People fall off cliffs, freeze to death, and die in avalanches. Death in Yellowstone, a book by Lee Whittlesey, chronicles all manner of mishap, but it seems that the easiest way to die in the park is to fall in the water some distance from shore. Most lakes in the park are about 44 degrees. You don't last long in that kind of water. I bring this up at the beginning because it is important. Part of the joy of walking in Yellowstone is that it is still, for the most part, a wilderness, which means that it is untamed, which, in turn, means that it is not impossible to get hurt, even if you follow all the rules. Thus, the wilderness that is Yellowstone Park affirms our mortality. That is why walking its trails makes us feel so damn alive. I'm going to talk about a few of the trails. They'll mostly be day hikes here at the beginning. Here's Mount Washburn. A quarter century ago, I moved to a small town just north of Yellowstone Park. I didn't know much about wildlife back then and honestly couldn't tell a mule deer from an antelope. I wasn't certain why Yellowstone contained more geysers than any place on Earth. I was unaware that there was a huge lake, one of the largest alpine lakes on Earth, up there in the pines. I didn't know much. But I wasn't a tourist. Oh no, I was much too cool for that. I never went to Yellowstone specifically to look at, the mud pots or Old Faithful or various thermal springs. It always seemed to me like that had somehow been done, and that serious persons, like myself, went into the back country, and we did that specifically to avoid all those other persons who didn't know that gaping at geysers or giggling at the flatulent-sounding mud pots was, for tourists who were somehow inferior. In fact, the places where tourists customarily go are supremely worthy of seeing, even if you have to share the wonder. That's the conclusion I've come to after a quarter century of puttering around in the park. Oh, I've been out in the back country quite a bit, and I've seen the tourist attractions, all of them, several times. I just didn't know how to look at them. I was lost in my own backyard. I wish that someone had just slapped me early on. Well, perhaps I could have done without the slap, but it would have been okay if someone wiser in the ways of the park had just shown me certain things and told me to shut up and listen. Stop being so damn superior. You're acting like a jerk. I have, in fact, a long-standing fantasy in which I take a younger version of myself up to the park and show him the one thing he truly has to understand. It would probably be a hassle getting him through the entrance and up to the summit of Mount Washburn. He'd be asking questions and trying to stop for a walk every time we saw a backcountry trailhead. This young guy would be distracted. I'd have to talk to him in a severe manner. I imagine it would go like this. Okay, shut up. We're going to the park, and it's going to be a couple hours driving, and I'm not going to let you talk about anything at all because you are just going to get all enthralled with this or that and lose the central theme. So here we go, and you might as well be blindfolded because we are not going to talk about the mountains that run on either side of Paradise Valley as we go up the Yellowstone River towards the entrance to Yellowstone Park. Oh, those are antelope over there. Look, stop complaining. I'm taking you 25 years closer to figuring out the geological essence of the park. You don't care about geology? How about the end of civilization as we know it? No, I'm not kidding you. The end of civilization as we know it. Sure, right, make fun. Just another damn thing to worry about. Dumb butt. Here's the north entrance to the park. We'll stop. I'll show my national park pass to the ranger in the little guardhouse. Yeah, she's attractive, I agree. Some of these lady rangers, I have to admit, if you get a thing for women in uniform. Wait, see how easy it is to let things distract you from the central point? Now we're passing the 45th parallel, right at the sign there, halfway between the equator and the North Pole. And those are elk emerging out of the steam which comes from thermal springs dropping into the river. And yes, you can bathe in the hot pots there, where the thermal water drops into the river. But that's not why we've come to the park today. Don't those elk moving through the steam look like they're in some kind of movie about supernatural beings? But we're getting distracted. And now here we go. We're driving through the little administrative village of Mammoth. Yes, it's named for those steaming terraces of multicolored rock looming up over there to our right. Mammoth Hot Springs. Sure, we could stop and take a walk, but there are wooden stairs and wooden walkways, and you'd have to stay on the trail, and there'll probably be a lot of people all bunched together looking at the delicate colors of the various thermal pools up on top of the terraces, and you'll have to hear people say things like, "Kind of pretty, huh?" And so you don't want to go up there, do you? You're too cool for that Disneyland sort of stuff, right? See, that's what I mean. I was the same way when I was you 25 years ago. Exactly the same way. No Old Faithful for me. Been there, done that. Now I'm too cool. This, I've come to realize, is a moronic attitude. That's why we're going where we're going today. What? No, that's a coyote. Wolves are bigger. There's some bison over there. Ignore them, please, as much as you can ignore 50 or 60 animals weighing up to 2,000 pounds apiece. Biggest land animal in North America. But we'll deal with them later. We're on our way to Tower Junction, then we'll turn south, and we'll stop near the top of Dunraven Pass, and then we'll climb to the summit of Mount Washburn. Why? Because our sole ambition this trip is to begin the process of coming to grips with some of the most significant and convulsive cataclysms that ever occurred on the face of the earth. But see, here's the problem with Yellowstone. You can start off a trip with every intention of trying to understand the ultimate and end up studying wildflowers. The whole park is an embarrassment of wonders. So here we are at Dunraven Pass, 8,895 feet in elevation, and here's where we'll park. Then we'll walk to the top. The guidebooks say the walk to the fire lookout on the summit rises about 1,400 feet and should take about 2 hours, much less if you're acclimated, and the view from the summit at 10,243 feet is said to be soul-stirring. Yeah, I know, it isn't exactly your idea of climbing a mountain. This is just a big, wide trail, and it used to be a stagecoach road when it was built, back in 1905. See those old clumps of asphalt? In the 1920s, when they let cars into the park, people drove up to the top. They drove up in reverse because Model T Fords didn't have fuel pumps and you couldn't get gas to the engine on these steep slopes. There's a sign at the trailhead which says, in effect, that Mount Washburn is a bear frequenting area, and that it is not impossible to be eaten by a grizzly while walking up this trail. I think such signs make one alert. If you tend to worry about bears, and you should, the first part of the trail may seem a little claustrophobic. It is in deep woods, but it eventually emerges into grasslands set in long, sloping aprons, and for most of the summer and early fall these areas are alive with wildflowers. Some say this is the best place in the park to see flowers, the colors swirling and intertwining like those on an intricate Persian carpet. Occasionally we'll get a view of the fire lookout up top, a 2-story building with floor-to-ceiling windows.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?